Hey, what is up everyone? Team Minato here, back with another video, and tonight we will be talking about the 5 mistakes that I made as a beginner photographer. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, yes, we will be talking about the 5 mistakes that I made as a beginner photographer. Okay, so without any further ado, let's start with the first mistake. First mistake that I made is trusting that screen on the back of your camera too much. Again, that screen is not the best representation of the photos that you take, and you can't take that screen too seriously because it's small and it's not really gonna show you what the image can be after you open it in your computer. If you want to check, you also have different tools built into your camera that you can check for exposure or composition, like that. For exposure, you can use the exposure compensation meter at the bottom of your screens, and if it's way on the right, that means it's too bright, it's blown out, and if it's way on the left, that means it is underexposed and it's too dark. Either way on the right or way on the left, and you're gonna end up losing a lot of detail when you try to recover that in post, depending on how good the dynamic range in your camera is. So my tip is to really not be very dependent on that screen in terms of image, but depend on it in terms of using the different tools that is in there that you can use to improve your photo. Like there's also this like level thing wherein you can check if the horizons are straight in your photos, and those tools are often overlooked but can really help you improve your images and help you take better photographs. Okay, moving on to mistake number 2. Mistake number 2 is deleting photos in camera. This is, for me, is a very big mistake, to delete photos in camera, because all photos have a potential to be great. Some photos just need a little bit more TLC. No, I don't wanna meet you nowhere, no. You'll never know what you'll end up with. Like, there is this photo that sold for $4.3 million. Yes, you heard that right. It was $4.3 million, and it was taken by Andreas Gursky. It's called Rain 2, and it was taken with film, and it was taken, I think, in 1999, where post-processing was, I think, a bit different. In the original photo, it had like factories on the background and stuff like that, but he actually removed it in post, and it sold for like $4.3 million. Imagine having a photo that sells for $4.3 million. That's a lot of dollars. That's a lot of money. So again, don't delete in camera until you see it, until you can really visualize what you can do with that photo in post when you open it in your camera. And there's nothing really there's nothing to lose by just keeping that photo in your camera. Unless that you accidentally took a photo with your lens cap on, or when you're just walking with your camera, those you can delete. But those photos that you really take, don't delete it. Wait until you get home, man. You got nothing to lose. Okay, moving on. Mistake number 3 is over editing your photos. As a beginner photographer, I do tend to get a little bit too excited when I edit these photos that I take, because you just want it to look a certain way, and without knowing that you're already overdoing it already. You just go into Lightroom and just bump up the clarity, bump up the saturation, bump up everything, bump up, or lower down, bump up the highlights. And you'll end up having an image that doesn't really look natural, or doesn't really look real, or looks a bit too cartoony. And also with taking like portraits, there's a lot of photos that I see that doesn't look real, or there's a lot of photos that I produce that don't look real, because I keep on forgetting that yes, human beings have pores too, and if you remove those pores, it's not gonna look natural, it's not gonna look the best. Especially when you just really lower down the texture to like -80, -90, it's not gonna make the picture look good. It's just gonna make them look a little bit blurry. There's gonna make them look like almost unnatural, look like plastic. You're gonna look like Barbie without any pores. And we also tend to brighten up the eyes too much, because when we brighten up the eyes, it has like the tendency to look sharper. But if you overdo it, it's not gonna look natural. Again, you're gonna end up with a person looking like an alien, and that's not a proper representation of that person. Moving on, mistake number 4, not being thorough enough with your settings. I'm so guilty of this, like going on a photo walk and just not dialing in my settings from the get-go, not dialing in my ISO, my shutter speed, my aperture. Especially with clients, you really have to make sure that all of your settings are dialed in, because you can't do that shoot again. It's gonna waste so much time. It's gonna waste so much of your resources. It's gonna waste so much of your money if you end up having bad images because you didn't dial in your photos. I mean, I said in the first part that don't depend on the screen, but use it as a reference at least, or use those numbers there to check if your settings are dialed in. Like for example, I was taking photos of my girlfriend. Good thing it was just for fun. It wasn't a paid shoot. And in the EOS R, there's like a thumb thing, like a touch bar on the top, and I ended up sliding it in, but I had it set to adjust my ISO, and my ISO ended up being 4,000. And I think I took like 20 pictures before I noticed that my shutter speed is at 8,000, because I was shooting at aperture priority. So my shutter speed was at 8,000. Then why is it 8,000? And then I checked the ISO, ended up the ISO is at 4,000. Then that will start to introduce noise, even though the EOS R has decent low light capabilities. When you start editing those photos in Lightroom, when you move those dials, it's gonna be more limiting, and it's gonna take more of your time to edit. So for like 20 photos, I ended up with 4 or 5. Good thing I had photos before that happened, and photos again after that happened. So I was able to give my girlfriend lots of photos still from that shoot. So make sure your settings are dialed in, especially when you're doing client work. Again, it's gonna waste so much time, so much of your resources, so much money if you redo the shoot because you weren't being thorough enough with your settings. Just check it, man. Just glance on the screen, check your settings. Okay, moving on. Mistake number 5 is, I'm very guilty up to this date after 10 months of doing photography, and that is not taking enough photos. I don't take enough photos and end up regretting it. Make sure you take enough photos. Again, this stems out from the very first mistake that I mentioned, which is depending on the screen of your camera too much. Because when you take that photo, and you check that screen, and you see that, yeah, it looks good, I'm great, then you just move on. Next occasion, next pose, next product. And then when you get to post-production, editing that photo, you open it up in Lightroom in your computer, and you end up having it. It's blurry. I moved a little bit when I took this photo. I don't have any extras. Or it would have been nicer if I took it from a lower angle or a higher angle. But you don't have it because you didn't take enough photos. And you're gonna end up regretting it and wishing that you made slight adjustments and added more photos of that thing or of that person, and you end up not giving your best work to your client, or your best work is not uploaded on social media for the people to see, wherein you can get more clients. So there's nothing to lose when taking extra photos, right? I mean, you're just taking extra photos, just keep it. Again, this is also related to the second point, which was deleting on camera. Just take a lot of pictures, take it from different angles. I mean, like if you go traveling and you see a very beautiful scenery, you take a picture of that, and when you look at your screen, yeah, looks good, and then you go home, you want to blow it up, ends up being blurry. And just take enough photos. Please, guys, learn from your mistakes, learn from my mistakes, and just take a lot of photos. There's nothing wrong with taking a lot of photos. I mean, you're already doing a shoot with the client. He or she is already paying you for that shoot, and just take extra flicks, take extra photos, and you might end up with something greater than what you first took. I mean, so yeah, so those are the 5 mistakes that I made as a beginner photographer. I'm still making these mistakes. I'm still guilty of making these mistakes. I mean, I'm 10 months in. There's a long road ahead of me, and I'm willing to trek that road, willing to learn every step of the way. And just to summarize to you guys, those 5 mistakes is: first, trusting the screen too much. Second is deleting on camera. Third is over editing your photos. 4 is not being thorough enough and dialing your settings in. And 5th one is not taking enough photos. So guys, if you feel like you learned something, or you feel like you can resonate with the videos, with the mistakes that I mentioned, please do hit the subscribe button, hit the bell if you want to see more of my stuff, and hit the like button, and share this with your friends. Share this with your photography friends. If you have friends starting out in photography, show this to them. Maybe it can save them some time and money. And again, an update for the giveaway: I'm extending it 1 more week because I think there's only like 3 people who joined. I want more people to join. The link to that video is up here, so you can win yourself a film camera. Yeah, that is it for me tonight. Good night, guys. Peace out.